Welcome back to another special episode of Made Menace meets Detroit. I'm Mark, your host, and we have a very special guest here. It's my mentor, our mentor for so many people in Detroit, and I can't wait to introduce him. You guys probably seen him on another episode in the past, but I'm going to let him do an introduction for all our new guests here. I'm very excited for you to take the floor.
Yeah,
Reyes.
so Reyes Poetry, just became Visit Detroit's global underground ambassador officially. I have been working with Visit Detroit for about 3 years. And we did do a few projects. In particular, we did one in Burnley for the team there, the football team there, soccer team there. But we officially announced the position last week, and really just trying to get out to tell people about our work, the work of We Are Culture Creators. Also brought you a gift to make sure. One of our, great underwriters is Herradura Tequila.
Yo.
So we were just on a trip in Mexico, and I want to make sure that I give you this bottle.
Thank you, man. This is, and congratulations on everything.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. We'll get into the tequila for sure.
Super dope, man.
Yeah, so, I think like right now, with the work that I've been doing as the Global Underground Ambassador, we're really just trying to bridge different communities across the world and help them understand, learn, process like underground culture in Detroit, but also on the other scale, right? Like take some Detroit folks into some of those spaces. And we've done exchanges with Berlin, we've done exchanges with Paris, recently just came back from Mexico City, Guadalajara. And so I think with our work through Visit Detroit, our goal really is just to highlight those pockets that when you're coming in from out of town, you might not, be hip to, right? Detroit is really invitation only sometimes, right? If you don't know, you don't know. You're not going to find it on a website. And I think that's the beauty of our city. And we're kind of in this time period, and it's almost like a time capsule as the city develops, as gentrification takes place, as new companies come in and things are moving. The city won't always be like that. Like, we've worked together for a number of years, like probably almost a decade, honestly. I've probably known you for almost a little bit over 11 years. That Detroit was very different even then from where Detroit is now, right? And we started in the underground scene, not knowing there was anyone else in the world, right? It was We Are Culture Creators, a few other groups, just working together and working out of our house, doing events in our backyard for 40 people. But it felt like the center of the universe, right? It felt like the most important place in the world was to be in our backyard in Detroit and be with each other and work with each other and build, right? And so I think, we're in this time frame in Detroit where those type of events are becoming more and more difficult. And it's a good and bad thing, right? It's a double edge. As we change administration with a new mayor coming in and who that will be, the question is like, what will be their policy on the nighttime economy, the underground economy, the things that draw people here. And it's a balance between residents, because I also understand that too, and art and artists and creatives. I think sometimes the conflict becomes when it's the creatives and artists that grew up here and are from here and those sort of things. I myself am a transplant. I grew up in Saginaw, went away, built in Chicago, built in New York, and came back as an adult in 2012 and was super inspired by Detroit and was happy to be home because Michigan's home.
For real.
And I feel like, with this new position, my goal is just to highlight a lot of the voices that don't get seen. We get to see a lot of the brand stuff, and that's cool. We get to see a lot of, if a certain brand comes into the city and opens up their new flagship store, we get to see all of those influencers and people going, and that's a really cool thing because I like getting invited to those things too. I like the free drinks and the good food. But I think there's another side of Detroit too that people need to see, right? And those are the pockets, the communities, the underground scene. And underground is a really loose word, but what we call the scene, the art scene, we call it the scene, right? Internally, if you say, oh, are they a part of the scene? Me and you know what that means, but the average person might not know what that means. There's just a lot of local vernacular when we say like, oh, are they a part of the scene? Yeah, they are or they're not. But that's what I want to highlight,
100%.
The corners, all the things that go beyond like Woodward and Capitol Park and those spaces. Like, what are the neighborhoods? What are the communities doing work? What are the new kind of, what's the new sound coming out? Being the home of techno, there's a bunch of new, younger artists that are creating and taking what they learned from those techno artists and DJs and are creating their own pockets, right? And so that to me is the interesting space for what the role for the underground, the global underground ambassador is like the interesting space.
100%. And Detroit, like, it has so much to offer. You know, congratulations again, man. It really makes sense that you got this position. You worked not only in Detroit, but Michigan as a whole.
Yeah.
And now, like, with your work, like, I can speak from personal experience. You've helped so many people, just young people, come to understand business, arts, culture, like introducing in such a safe way, you know, and that's really
For
comforting,
sure.
man. I like you as a mentor. It's like, it's a great thing to have you in the city. So I want to ask you, like, with the new position and all these pockets that you're going to show for Detroit, like, what are you most excited about?
I mean, I think like for me, the exchanges between the different pockets in the world, you know, we've done, I mean, you've been on a trip with us overseas. You know, we've done work in Berlin and Paris and London. And now, you know, we're getting into Mexico City. We've been to the Dominican Republic and start kind of building there. I think to me, the cultural exchange of artists from the international music scene coming here and then us exporting the cultural, kind of the cultural ambassadors that we have in our city, the DJs, the rappers, the performers, to be able to go to those communities. I think that's one thing I'm excited about, seeing how can we find resources, because a lot of this stuff for us is just resources, and resources mean money, right? Opportunity, funding. And there is in the city spaces where you can find that, right? Whether that's a commercial kind of avenue where you get a sponsorship, or it's a grant that you write, or it's a relationship and a partnership that's allowing you to bring resources to fly an artist in. You know, as We Are Culture Creators, I'm co-director, and I have been, you know, obviously I haven't stopped doing that. That's kind of like my full-time gig, right? In the sense of like work. But it doesn't feel like work because it's more a lifestyle choice, right? Like you take the good with the bad, you live a certain lifestyle. I'm not too concerned about like what type of car I drive and those sort of things. But really about building out that experience for other young folks. I think the confusion can be sometimes, if you look at We Are Culture Creators, it looks like a very commercial entity on purpose. We've curated our visual that way, but the underpin of our work is really to try to help young people elevate, and young adults. Like, it doesn't have to be youth at this point. It's really like young adults that are working in the industry, and just help them find opportunity, right? I mean, we've taken over 60 young people overseas in our time, right? And those are young people that have been overseas now that may have not left Detroit very much. And I'm really proud of that part of our work. And it kind of fits into the Global Underground Ambassador role. And I feel like, you know, as we're building, seeing Menace here, right, in this space, and having your own office space and your own like studio to be able to record, to see like, you know, our partnership with Crowd Freak and do our work with Backwoods and Bonfires, to see those things grow. And then also to see like Nonstop Hip Hop and the work that Loke and Damasio are doing. I mean, there's like just seeds, right? Like Fiesta House with EJ, who's like more of a business partner, but still, you know, I definitely work in those elements of Fiesta House and how we do Fiesta Vibes Detroit, which is his company, and We Are Culture Creators, which is our nonprofit, and We Merge, and Mama's Kitchen, which is built into that. You know, and seeing each one of those groups, Medium, who runs the Photo House, which is a house that we have, which is dedicated to media, art, and photography. So, I mean, like, our rule always with We Are Culture Creators, and because I had such a long history in the nonprofit world, was if you wanted to really work on the business side, not so much the youth side. The youth side is always, you can use the studio, you can come in for your equipment, you can hang out, you can use the backyard. But on the business side, where we're trying to create events together, whoever partners with us should have their own company, whether it's a legal LLC or a collective, but something that is theirs. Because a lot of times in the nonprofit industrial complex, which is a real term, you know, you take young people, they go through your work, they elevate your work, they build your work, but they don't leave with anything, right? Like, I was one of those people that went through and worked 13 years at the same nonprofit, and I didn't have any intellectual property when I left, right? I was fine with that. I felt good about leaving that work, I felt good about my mentors there. There definitely was a little area that was uncomfortable because we were trying to figure it out, right? I was the centerpiece of a lot of work for a long time, and then I'm gone. And it felt weird for them, and it felt weird for me. It was almost like a breakup, right?
Yeah.
And then coming back, though, I was having my own kind of space with, you know, the other co-director, Elizabeth Stone, and then going back to Chicago and being able to work more as like lateral as opposed to like being an employee, but now I have an organization. I thought it was important that any young person working with us, you know, had that opportunity, bro, like that had their own stuff, because anything can happen, things can change. I could wake up one day and be like, you know, I don't want to do culture creators anymore. So what does that mean for all the young people that have invested time, but now they have their own thing that they could be like, that's cool, bro. Boom, I got my thing. I can keep going with the stuff I learned. That's more on the entrepreneur kind of like program, right? On the youth side, you can always call me, right? There's always going to be an opportunity for me to help or support, and that way, that's a whole different side of my brain, you know? But when we're trying to build things and create things for our city and also provide for our, you know, our families, for lack of a better word, our term, that part is important for a young person to have their own, what we would call self-determination, self-actualization, and self-realization. Those are just words that mean like you can figure out and create on your own and create your own path, you know?
100%. They can walk away with that foundational piece that sets them apart, makes them who they are, and it's like.
I mean, you're one of those groups, right? Not saying that you were completely under culture creators, but obviously like we were all working together.
100%.
And you're able to create your own thing, which is better for you and better for us in a sense of building in the city.
Most definitely.
So I think like that part of our work is one of the things I'm most proud of, is seeing how many young folks have created their own companies, their own collectives, their own opportunities, right? And I would guess it's around 20, if I had to guess, like, I don't know, give or take. And that doesn't count the artists that are doing work. I'm just saying people that have created some entity or, you know, nonprofit or business or collective. And I'm really proud of that part. So
it's cool. It's cool to see. It's like once, like, these are all our friends, and now as business partners, and still friendship there. It's truly amazing to see. And I want to talk a little bit about the trips. I myself went on one of the trips to Paris. That trip, I was the first person in my family ever to leave the U.S. You know what I'm saying? And that's a crazy thing to go back and say. And it's honestly one of the most valuable experiences in my life. I've learned a lot. It was so cool seeing all the art and how different that culture was there to here. But you've taken so many artists and creators on different parts of the world. You know, like, tell me about it. Like, what is it like?
For me, bro, it's always more fun if the people that I care about, love, and I'm in the mud with are there with me. I get a lot of opportunities to travel. I'm very privileged. But if you look at my history, bro, like, my parents have never left the country. Neither one of my parents, right? They're in their mid-60s now. Never left the country. And I feel like growing up, you know, I used to work in the fields, you know, like that was something that we did in the summer with my cousins. We're Mexicans, right? So didn't speak Spanish, was in this weird world in Saginaw, right? And leaving the country was something that was so distant, right? It was almost like I didn't know anyone except for one person that had backpacked and toured, right? And it was a mentor of mine. And actually, I'll be on his podcast during this tour in Saginaw. And my mentor kind of had more of the college experience and had backpacked through Europe. And college really wasn't something I wanted to do. But he helped me get my passport. And I was supposed to go on tour and do photography for a band. This was when I was like 17, turning 18. So I went and got my passport, thankfully from him, which didn't allow me just to get my passport every year, right? I've had 3 different ones, 'cause I'm a little older, you know? And because he said, hey, go get your passport, I got it. The trip got canceled because there was a conflict in Europe, and the tour, I would imagine, the sales weren't going the way they wanted. So I didn't get to go, right? But I was ready. I was scared, nervous. I had nobody, there was no like person meeting me on the other end. I had to go meet the band, but it got canceled. So I had prepared mentally to go. So then you think like, okay, you know, it wasn't meant to be. Getting to Chicago, I started to do political prisoner work around Puerto Rican independence movement. And because I was doing art and culture and writing plays and poems and doing all this work, but I was also doing day-to-day work, right, bro? I was like the one filling envelopes, filling out surveys, knocking on doors, talking to people, creating events. I started to get sent to places. They're like, all right, we need you to go to LA to go to a meeting. We need you to stay in New York for a few months so you could go do the campaign. You know, this trip to Venezuela came up when I was 25. I was actually 24. So I was in charge of, me and one other person and a few other people that were like 23 to 25 years old. We're in charge of 33 people to go to Venezuela for a youth festival, right? So we took 33 young people and, you know, traveled to Venezuela right after the Bolivarian Revolution. Things were really organized, but also not organized because they didn't expect thousands of people to come in. So we're thinking we're gonna come in and get on a bus, and we had to wait for 9 hours at the airport because the drivers were tired. You know, had it not been for a Puerto Rican that I knew, because my Spanish, I can't communicate, you know, past a few sentences. I kind of woke up just to get some air, and there was a Puerto Rican woman from New York I knew, and she was like, yo, I found a bus driver that will take all of you if you get up right now. Like getting up in the night, you know, to going through the jungle. So like that experience in Chicago taught me, for my young folks that I was working with, and these are young folks close to, like, the youngest was like 13, 14, and I'm 24. Everybody's under 24. I'm like the second oldest in the group. So we're in charge of like young people, being a young person. And I think that experience for me shaped how important traveling is, right? And for my personal life, I felt like I could go to Europe and tour all the time if I wanted to, right? I could go do poetry and hang out with friends and crash at their houses. But Olad from Berlin, Gangways Berlin, offered us an exchange, and he really covered everything. And that was really the stem of the Detroit traveling. It's like without Olad, without their work, without them supporting us, it wouldn't have kickstarted our ability to start thinking beyond Detroit. And I don't think it's like to think beyond Detroit to abandon Detroit. I think, you know, because sometimes like, oh, you know, like older generation might look at it like you're just wasting time traveling. But the cultural exchange, I mean, you could speak to that. Like, what do those artists that travel with us, what is their confidence coming back? If you can do shows in Berlin, in Paris, in London, in Madrid, in Morocco, how hard is it for you to do a show in your own neighborhood, right? Like it's a whole different psychological shift. So, you know, we're working on some funding to try to keep that going. It's not like a centerpiece necessarily of our work, but it is something that I would love to offer every year, like a different group can go, you know, and hopefully one day when we come back, we'll be like, oh, we sent 200 young people overseas, 300 young people, you know? Because I think for our communities, you know, like these blockers are put on. And then with Latinos, you know, we have this reference to home, which is Puerto Rico, DR, Mexico. For a lot of black folks, and this is just from my perspective of working with young black youth, it's even harder for them to think about being outside because there isn't that, maybe that anchor culturally, you know, in the sense of like, you know, like, yo, I can go there and that's where my grandparents are from, right? You're searching. So I think I'm proud of that piece too, is being able to kind of like facilitate a door where maybe now you do have some opportunities to be able to go to places that are part of your cultural history. You know, like I know even for Liz, who's, you know, black woman in our collective, co-director, she wants to go to Mississippi, you know, and look for her folks and see where she's from and connect with that. And I think that's a part of travel. Like not only is it just international travel, but just being able to be like, hey, you know what, I already went to Paris, but maybe I want to go to like Mexico City where my people are from, which is like what drove me coming back from Europe. I was like, okay, maybe I want to spend some more time going to where my great grandfather's buried, which is Mexico City, and trying to discover that part that was kind of lost. And I don't feel like being a Mexican in the United States, I'm less than anything. It's just like I'm a product of neoliberalism and globalization, and you know, like I'm a product of that. So I don't apologize for being raised the way I was raised. I mean, you know, my mother made tortillas, but I didn't speak Spanish, right? Like my family would make tamales, and most of my aunts don't speak any Spanish, but they're making tamales. So there's this weird thing that happens. with culture.
It's like that mix.
Yeah, and it's like here like the coming up was always about assimilation, right? You assimilate to be American, but what is American culture, bro? Like what is it, you know?
Yeah.
You could argue that the best export of American culture is black music. So then what are we talking about, right? Are we talking about black identity, or what is American? American is apple pie, right? That's the saying that people say, right? So I think like that's the complexity of Detroit is 80% black, right? So what is our cultural export, right? Like what is the stuff that we take to the world? Punk music, the rhythms of punk music are founded here, right, in Detroit. Techno, founded in Detroit, right? House, you have a mix of Chicago, Detroit. You have Motown, obviously, right? You have all these layers, and now you have this new wave of rappers that are coming out that are getting like a national spotlight. So I think that part of international work is so important that, you know, we don't get just caught up on museum style validation of art, because folk art and fine art, there's a thin line between which is which, right? People would say, well, folk art is like you can reproduce it easily. You can, you know, you can make a bunch of those, right? You can create, let's say a folk artist is making like a cool cultural hat. Well, you can make thousands of them, but it's still art, right? And it's just a value of like what we value something. I've literally seen paintings that are just white, right? Just a white painting, right? And it's up for $100,000.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah,
but they would say, well, I use different types of whites. If you really look at it, this pigment is different. There was time put into it. But that's fine art, and that's more of a difficult, and it's more expensive because making, like, let's say some cultural shoes is like less valuable. So to me, that is the thing, is also to understand modern art as like performance, modern art as like poetry, spoken word, rap, hip hop, DJing, is also, right, art. And so therefore we should find resources and funds to be able to create those pathways.
100%.
Because you were in Paris, like people rap everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And they're rapping in French, English, they're rapping in their native like tongue, if they're from like the Ivory Coast or, you know, wherever they immigrated from in North Africa to Paris, like they're mixing up languages.
It was an interesting rap scene. I didn't even know it was that much hip hop and rap
crazy.
in Paris. It is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's one of the places where like the parallel to Detroit, at least in the experience of the immigrant populations, has a little bit more. You know, our friend Marvin Bonaire out there, he's a photographer, and you know, he captures like the black cultural scene of Paris and London. And you know, he's done some stuff in China too, but that's like his main focus was capturing that population of like work. And you know, there the suburbs are more like the hood, right? The suburbs are like the neighborhoods where the culture and art and where black and brown folks are, and every other gradient. And the center city is where like the wealthy folks live. So for him, 93 is the neighborhood he's in, and 93 has such a rich history of like football players, I mean soccer players, you know, arts, music, and cultural contributions, but it has that immigrant layer to it, that black kind of layer of art and music and culture wherever black folks go, and create these enclaves of cultural production that, you know, a country will value to a degree, right? You're gonna prop up your best, but maybe not value them as humans in the same way, right? But what they produce
It's
is
like,
great,
yeah, that's good.
right? You know, like, but
We'll take that.
yeah, but you know, so.
No, but yeah, you bring up a very important point, especially when it comes to art. It's like the value behind the perception. And also, like, speaking of art, and I want to speak to you more on this, spoken word and poetry. I feel like that's the type of art that you only get, like, when the person is telling you, of course, unless it's recorded, but it's more of an experience, you know,
Yeah.
to be there in person. How did you get into it? Like, what's your start behind that?
Well, like I came up in the 90s, and you know, at that time for me, like my favorite rapper was Tupac. It's super cliche, but it was like one of my favorite rappers. But then I was exposed to like this kind of more underground spiel of like Black Star, which is like Mos Def and Talib Kweli and Common Sense, and if you dig deeper, Sound Bombing 1 and 2 and Ruckus Records, and there was this layer of lyricism to my favorite like rappers, which was like Be Mos Def, Common Sense. This layer of lyricism that they were doing in their rhymes, and so I could rap. You know what I mean? I could. I've been rapping probably since I was like 11, but I never thought like I could do anything with it. And sometimes I was just finishing songs in my head, and you know, I had a little rap group for a little bit, but I didn't feel I was good. So instead of rapping, I started doing this stuff I moved from Michigan and moved to Phoenix for a little bit, and I was with this old school rapper, super obscure, nobody would know who he is, but he had a TV show in Phoenix and public access. And what we would do is we'd go to hip hop shows, and then that led to us organizing hip hop shows. And so every night I'd watch rappers for like a year, and I was like, you know what? I think I could perform. Maybe I don't have that set yet to rap, but I know I can put together words well. And I had written some poems when I was younger, didn't think of anything of it. And then a movie called Slam comes out with Saul Williams. And I watched that movie, and it's based in Philadelphia, really great movie, super indie, super independent movie. So I watched that movie, then I come back to Saginaw for a bit to regroup before I go to Chicago, and they had booked a slam poet at the local college in my community in Saginaw. So I went to it and I saw him perform, and I started being like, all right, I think I could do that, right? I think I could do that. So I entered a poetry contest at the college and I won. Well, actually, no, I got second place. So I didn't win, I got second place. But there was somebody from Chicago in that audience that was like, hey, you're really good. Would you like to perform at our conference? And I went to this conference at 19 and I performed and I did really well, and I got a bunch of shows and gigs, and you know, like that somebody asked me how much I charge, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think I charged $500 for my first show, which quickly went up to like $1,500, you know, like immediately, because I was like, wait a minute. They're like, oh yeah, they said yeah so quick, like so. But having said that, the poetry for me has opened up the most doors. One, I would do it without pay. Like I love it. It's like, you know, I don't do it as much, which actually I feel like helps me value it a little bit more. But poetry opened up every single door all the way up to this position, you know, with Visit Detroit. But Def Poetry drops. And then now you start seeing like other poets that I know that are on the show, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, you know, Kanye's on the show. Well, the old Kanye. He's on the show, you know. All these artists from like the creative circle are making appearances. Mos Def is on the show. And I had actually met the producer before the show came out. And this is the thing about fear. This is what I'm gonna say, because like, you know, what you normally hear is the bravado of like the art, and you know, I'm at the top of my level. Bro, like I met the producer of Def Poetry, and I was so afraid to send them anything, right? And I sat out. Then I lost the number, right? And first season, she had heard me, and she was like, I think you'd be great, just send me your stuff, and I never did. Then Def Poetry takes off 3, 4 seasons, whatever it is. I think it's 3 seasons. And you know, the fear for me to fail, I didn't send an audition tape in because I was afraid that I would fail. If they didn't say no, in my head, I could be on there, right? And that's a lesson for any artist, is that sometimes we self-sabotage, right?
100%.
And so you're talking about somebody now, I'm 23, maybe. Had I had somebody say, bro, get it together, you should audition, yeah, I probably would have. But I didn't have that in my life. And so I, out of fear, didn't send an audition tape, didn't follow up with the producer. And, you know, I did get a HBO opportunity, and I wrote a poem called We Are for this series they were doing in the Latino market. It was HBO, I think it was called Habla, or HBO Mas, I think it was called. So I was on HBO a few times, but I did regret, right, not pushing to be on Def Poetry. But that forced me to start self-reflecting and being like, well, maybe I can do something with poetry. So it took me a little bit longer, and I dropped 3 albums. And my last album, I started shooting music videos, right, on YouTube, and started using YouTube as a tool early, like maybe this would have been like 2011, 2012-ish.
He was early on it.
Yeah, so I started dropping videos and getting good responses. Not super viral, you know, maybe it gets like 10,000, maybe get 5,000 on another one, 3,700, but people were seeing my work. And then Facebook pops up and I started using that as a tool. Not so much MySpace, I had a MySpace, but I didn't get to use MySpace as a tool very much. It was just like MySpace. So I think through all that, what ends up happening is because I was doing more political work, my poetry was a little heavier political as a we poet as opposed to a me poet. Me poets kind of self-reflect. I was very much a movement poet. So I was writing a lot about political prisoners, immigration, you know, identity, culture of resistance, social justice. But that gave me my own lane. And, you know, so I started performing at colleges and I toured, 100 colleges a year for almost like, 4 years, 5 years in a row. But I was also, you know, when you create something and it becomes a product, for me, it changed my relationship with it. And so I think that's why I stopped for a bit. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna take a break. I never announced a break or anything. I just was like, oh, I'll go do this other thing. So then the energy I had for poetry was being put into We Are Culture Creators.
I see.
Right, so the energy, creative energy that I probably would feel was lacking, because I'm a creative person and anybody who's an artist, some of y'all can relate, like you can't choose to be creative. Sometimes it's just like a natural piece of you.
For real.
Or if it is a choice, you've done it so long that it's muscle memory and you feel weird when you don't create, right? So that void I would have as a human to want to create and share then was filled by culture creators.
I see.
So then curation, nonprofit, kind of cultural work, watching the young folks perform, I mean, you've been around me a whole lot, right? I'm one of the co-owners of Backwoods and Bonfires. If I asked Backwoods and Bonfires, can I do a poetry piece? Do you think people would say yes or no?
I think they'd say yes.
Of course they would say yeah.
100%.
But for me, there's a different joy that I get when I watch everyone from the city performing. There's a different gratification of creating a platform for our city that, one, it's one of the only Black-owned festivals in the city, right? Because I'm one of the non-Black folks, so I feel very privileged to be a part of that company. But two, it's made up of our folks.
Yeah.
It's Detroit people.
For real.
Right? Like top to bottom. When we first started Backwoods and Bonfires, we had like 200 local artists, right? And I don't say local to belittle anyone, it's just like artists that were known in Detroit. And for the first 3 years it was that, until we booked Doja Cat. And then we made a jump, which was like our partners, 50 Bars, and Danny, those two guys came in and added a lot, right? So now we had a new partner that was like, hey, let's try to take it this level. And they kind of took that, right? New blood, new people, people that had experience doing some different things than me and Kurt from Crowd Freak had. So to me, I wouldn't have those spaces if poetry wasn't the backbone of everything I've done, right? So, you know, I've worked with some really big artists. I mean, I performed at the Made Menace March with the Nation of Islam. I've traveled around the world with poetry, but I was still alone, right? I was still by myself and still felt, even when I was in New York, even when I was in Chicago, there was something in my head that said, I want to be back home. I want to have something to contribute in Michigan. I have something to give. And I think that's part of the swinging that all back to the international piece. It's like, it's more fun to me when I see y'all out there, right? And trips are annoying. People get on each other's nerves. It's life. We're staying in a tight room and sharing space. But there is a level of joy that is non-monetary, that has nothing to do with money, with interaction or exchange, that I personally get watching young folks' careers grow and blossom, right? There's a certain level of gratitude that I feel when I see a production come together and it's folks that we've built with. Like recently we were in South by Southwest, the music festival, and I got to watch, you know, a few of the collectives, Nonstop Hip Hop and a few other collectives come together that are younger than me and watch them work and create. And to me, there's just a level of like joy You know, after the event, I went by myself and had a beer by myself and just kind of decompressed. Because if you can help young people replicate the work that you're doing, if you can help young people find their vision, their path, because it's going to be different than mine. You know, like people talk about like nonprofits and, you know, companies and how they should be passed along. I don't really believe some of the culture creators necessarily needs to last for 30 years, because there's 30 of y'all that will have your own culture creators in your own way, in your own name, and your own vision. To me, that's okay. Because sometimes things, we keep things nostalgic for tradition, and sometimes we don't need to. Sometimes we just keep them strung along, and they lose their purpose, and they lose their vision, and they lose their ability to be dexterous. They move. I think that's the right word, to be able to move around and be flexible.
Yeah.
So, to me, same thing with art and poetry is that there is still a space for me. Like I was recently in Mexico City, and you know, Mexico City is experiencing gentrification, experiencing a lot of immigration from the United States, and things are going up. My great grandfather is buried in Mexico City. Like not some like esoteric idea of like, oh, my grandfather was here. No, his body is buried in Mexico City. Now we were the children of an affair with his maid, you know, so we were the maid's kids. Well, we would be the maid's, you know, great grandchildren. But having said that, you know, my attitude working in Mexico is like, I have something to contribute, I don't know what, but the people will tell me. When it's right, the people I'm with, working there, building with, they'll let me know,
100%.
right? Because I'll have my vision, but maybe that's not what's right for there, right? But the people I have around me, I trust enough to be like, one day, I'm just talking about these are Mexicans from Mexico City that I work with. I think they're gonna steer me in the right direction, and I'll discover what my purpose will be to contribute. I just know that I have a skill set, I have things I can offer, and at some point, those things will coalesce with the need that the people will tell me, yo, this is what we need you to do. Because that's how it was in Chicago. I didn't go to Chicago and build my own youth center. I said I can, and somebody tapped me in and was like, yo, this is what we're trying to do. Let's have you work on this, right? So the people there inform me of what I should do. And that's kind of how my attitude is like, they'll let me know, but it's still a drive as a Mexican American, quote unquote. I don't really use that term. I use Chicano Mexicano, but let's say for lack of a better term for an average kind of conversation, let's say a Mexican American. What does that mean going back to Mexico? I mean, we're only 100 years apart, you know? My grandfather was born in 1914, was in the United States by 1921. So somewhere in the middle they moved. So really it's been 100 years apart, but what does that mean for somebody that does want to contribute in some way, but also there's all these layers of complexity?
Yeah, and I mean, I think you said it perfectly. It all comes full circle. Like when it's time, I feel like you're not even gonna have to question it. Like you're gonna know. But also everything that you're building here is like a beacon. You know, your grandfather or great grandfather was there, 100 years apart.
100 years
like,
apart.
People from there and also from here, seeing that Mexican Americans, Black Americans, and it's just like that inspiration, that guidance is like much needed to make that connection stronger. I believe it's going to come full circle, as you're saying.
I think so. I hope so. And if it doesn't, it's okay, you know, because there's probably other places where I can contribute. And then, you know, as you start aging, you start thinking about your window. Like how much time do I really have to contribute where I can be physically fit and healthy and mentally sharp? And I have a mentor that's 81 years old, right, in Chicago, and he's sharp. And he still, you know, is running a lot of the things that his vision and his group built 50 years ago. So I do have examples where I can see people that are still, you know, contributing and not just like, you know, the traditional idea of like retiring in an old folks home, which is fine, you know, or, you know, put in the back room. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I put him in the back room. He's all right. So for me, I feel like, you know, you have to be realistic with time because time is a real thing. And what happens is that I have to become more selective in a way with my priorities. Whereas like if I was 20, bro, I have the whole future ahead of me, bro. Like I got everything. I can just wait and I can mess up 7 times and still be fine. I'm on my 9th mess up right now. So I have to like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm on my like 100th fail, right? So at a certain point you want to make things fit. And failure is a big part of the game too. Like I just don't ever want to project. Like I do feel like we have a pretty successful brand that is a nonprofit, and we do have our LLC side. But that was a number of fails, bro. That was a number of taking chances, taking risks, believing in yourself, believing in the vision. Sometimes even people close to you won't believe the vision. You know, they just won't. They don't see it, and that's okay. It's not for them to see. And it's cliche because the thing is, all you need is 3 people. My mentor always taught me, just 3. If you have 3 people that can believe, you can move mountains. 2 people is gonna be hard because it's like one-on-one and you're gonna have conflicts where it's 50-50. With the 3rd person, you can work things out. 3 people can attract 100 people. Like we say culture creators is like gravity, right? There's a reason why we have Damasio as like one of the key members, or Barely Hispanic, who is positioned as one of the best photographers, right, in the city. There's a reason why we have EJ as the main DJ for our work in partnership with Fiesta Vibes Detroit. And there's a reason why we attract, right, and work together at a high level, because there's a certain standard of work and a certain standard of work ethic that those people that I named have that you can't really teach. You can show someone and they can emulate it, because I was the same way, bro. Like when I was in my 20s, I was lazy, but I had a mentor that like could show me to be like, hey, if you did this with that much energy, think about how far you could be. And it started from back when I was a kid, right? Like working in the fields ain't easy work, you know? Like seeing my pops go to work every day, 24/7, no complaint, never called in, like clockwork, every day. We weren't super wealthy, and I wouldn't say necessarily like, you know, we were like the poorest in the community, but definitely we never were hungry. We always had our lights on. I didn't have that other story, right? Because my pops was actually around and made sure that he took care of business in that way. So seeing that work ethic, and then having my mother's spirit, who my mother was much more entrepreneurial and would take chances and risks and much more personable. My mom could sit here and meet you and just start talking to you, and it would feel like you knew her, and she would just like be able to communicate. I got that from my mom, right? So it took both. My dad's very stoic. My pops is like, he's not really gonna, once you talk to him, he's gonna warm up, but you're gonna think he doesn't like you at first, because he's just being shy, honestly, he's just quiet. Once he starts like knowing, then he's gonna start making jokes and stuff. But having those 2 examples and difference, like my dad was really stable on that work ethic piece, and my mom was much more a risk taker, only because she could, right? Because she had that stability of my pops. Like she didn't have to worry. So she owned a business a few times, and you know, like tried to make things work. And she was always the one hustling to find like where we're gonna live next. You know, if the house we only really. Again, they gave me some good stability. We only lived in 2 houses. And the reality, like a lot of people with foreclosures and those sort of things, you know, those things take place. But she always hustled up to try to find another place and be able to tell my pops, like, yo, we need to put money down right here so we can sell. I think it started with that, and then having mentors, bro. Like my mentors were just like, I used to deliver newspapers here in Detroit when I was like 14, 15 years old with my mentor. He has a newspaper called Mi Gente. And we used to go all up and down Southwest, and I would unload the truck and I would, boom, deliver papers and go to every restaurant and every business. And we would do that for years. But it taught me a different hustle, right? A different grind. He taught me how to make a pitch deck. And back then we were making pitch decks, not digital. You gotta print them out, you gotta cut them, you gotta put them in a folder, and you gotta mail them out. So
that's a whole different.
He showed me how to do that, bro. Like, listen, I learned how to use Photoshop in like 1995. Damn. I learned how to edit video on computers in 1996. I learned how to use like what would be the equivalent of InDesign right now. It was InDesign, Quark, and then PageMaker, I think was the first one. I was laying out newspapers when I was 16, 17. Had I not had somebody show me those things, it would have crippled me. because I still use those skill sets now to find sponsors, bro. I do pitch decks all day. I might mix it up with some Canva or some other tools, you know, use a lot of AI, Chat GPT. But had I not at 15, 16, 17 been encouraged to edit film and video and learn those things, bro, that I don't have to wait. Now I want a professional because they're gonna do it better than me, but I don't have to wait if I just need something out.
Yeah.
You know, I put a flyer out today that I did myself, right? I didn't have to wait for anyone. But when we want something a little more extravagant, I can go to a professional and be like, hey, but then I also know what the value of that is too, right? Like I can be like, yeah, bro, I see how much work you did on that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna compensate you, you know? As opposed to like, bro, they just did it. Let's do it together. But so anyway, I think like that work ethic piece is what you find in culture creators. And, you know, one of the other things of being like the underground global ambassador, I think, you know, being able to go to like a fancy kind of upscale environment is important, but also just as important to me is to be able to go stuff in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, just to be able to go to things that are in the Black community, the Latino community, the Arab community, and still be able to navigate and feel comfortable and feel like myself and feel welcomed, and be humble to be in those spaces. That's the main thing. I think traveling, when you're a world traveler as opposed to a tourist, there's differences. Like a tourist is going to go to be served. A world traveler goes to learn, right? Goes to intake, goes humbly, because I may not know that I'm being rude, because culturally maybe for them it's rude. And I'm looking at them like they have an attitude, right? And it just might be something that I said or did, or something that maybe I used the wrong hand to handshake. It could be any of those things, right? So if I go as a tourist, I'm gonna be upset, right? I'm gonna be like, bring me a martini, bring me a margarita, bring me whatever. But if I go as like a world traveler, bro, and I go to learn, I go to experience, and I go to like intake the environment, you're gonna have a whole different perspective.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And that's how I travel,
100%.
right? I go as somebody who is ignorant. Even if I feel like I'm so experienced, I'm still not, like I know Puerto Ricans really well, a lot of history. I wasn't raised Puerto Rican. I don't know what that means. Like I know Black culture in America really well, but I don't know what it means to be a Black man in America because I'm not Black. I have no idea what that means. I can study and understand some things, but I don't know what that feels like. So approaching an environment from a perspective of learning and intaking, and then when you're asked to contribute or when you're a part of that process, I think that piece is important. And I think that's something I learned more recently. When you're younger, you have more bravado, you have more, you know, more chip on your shoulder to be like, I'm gonna do whatever. So, you know, you live and learn.
100%.
So part of the process.
It is, man. And what a beautiful process, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, if you had any advice to give to any creatives, entrepreneurs, or anyone that's looking to even start a nonprofit, like what would you say to them?
I mean, to me, it's like, now I don't want to say this to be insensitive because I understand like structural racism. I understand that, you know, in our society, women are viewed differently, Black women, Latino women. But I would say that you have to have a certain level of like audacity and I think almost disconnect from reality to be able to create in your vision and kind of your path, because you're gonna hear so much negativity. You're gonna hear so much projection of, well, I don't think you can do that. It's like, no, you can't do that, but I can do that. I think I can do that. You know, a lot of people will project like, well, you know, we try, even for me, bro, like when I work with young people, younger creatives, they'll tell me an idea and I might have already done it and it failed. But I always say like this, I'll give you my open advice and I'll be like, but don't listen to me because you might have something I didn't have. You might have an edge, you might have something new, you might be looking at it in a different way than me. So even though I'll give you my honest opinion about why I think it might be difficult, but I'll say, but don't listen to me, bro. Like you just should, if you feel compassion to do it, do it. Because, so I think like the advice I would give is you almost have to be delusional in a way, in a positive way. Because a lot of times being an entrepreneur is working 70 hours to avoid 40 hours. But the 70 hours are your hours, you know? Like, 100%. So the 70 hours are yours. You can choose what to do. You can choose the vision. You're not working necessarily directly for someone else just for a paycheck. But yeah, the advice I would give is to have that delusion, and like it comes with, everybody got ideas. A film director, a pretty well-known film director, told me one time, I asked him, I got this idea, how can I pitch it to you? And he's like, dude, just make it and we'll see it. He goes, everybody got ideas. Everybody got ideas, brother. He said, just make it. And that stuck with me. And this was like when I was like 23, 24. I'm like, oh, bro, I got that. He's like, nah, bro. He's like, that ain't how it works. The real world don't work that way. So I feel like you make the path by walking. And in a lot of ways, I don't know about most, but some people can't see the vision of a room or how it's gonna look and how it's gonna be designed, right? And so a lot of people with your idea will be like that. They're not gonna be able to see what you see. And so you have to have this tunnel vision of focus that you believe in, and you're going to attract those people that do believe with you.
100%.
Because you will. Like, if you keep working in a public forum and you're doing whatever that idea is, you'll find your tribe. You'll find people that are like-minded. There is no coincidence that our series Fiesta House is partnered and created by EJ. There's no coincidence that we work together, bro. Like we found each other at the right time, in the right moment, with the right kind of chemistry, the right type of work ethic, the right balance. And I heard this thing recently where somebody told me, bro, if you have a collective, just tell the people, give 80%. Because I'm gonna give 110. I'm gonna give 110. Just give 80, then there's no disappointment, Because, I don't expect someone to work 110% on Culture Creators. That's delusional. To think that someone's gonna work on my idea and the thing that I'm leading 110% when you're dealing with human beings that have their own desires and drives. Give me 75, 80%. I can deal with that.
Yeah,
and that shit struck, it stuck with me. I was like, damn, that's actually a good analysis of because then you're not disappointed. Because I think sometimes people think too, I have the best idea in the world. Why wouldn't you want to contribute and be a part of it? It's like, bro, everybody got the best idea in the world. So I just think that for me, that ability to stay consistent, that's a big thing in entrepreneurship and business and nonprofit work. If you want to it's a consistency, right? Staying true to that mission, finding your tribe, and understanding that some people won't see what you see, which is why sometimes, that entrepreneurship kind of level is a special place. Like my sister will tell me that she looks at a chair, right, that's beat up. She can't see me refurbishing the chair. She can only see the chair beat up. She goes, I'm sorry, I don't have that, right? Whereas my mom will look at it and be like, you know what, if I put some spray paint on that, and so some people are just that way, bro. They don't see your idea, and it's okay, You just will find two people that do see it. Because you will, if you're working at something and pushing, you'll find it. Culture Creators, we came across so many people, and some people don't fit, or they fit for a while, or they fit for a little bit, and that's okay too. Maybe it's not their thing, and that's okay too. It doesn't make them my enemy. It just is like, okay, well, it served its time, we did our work, and now we're doing something else.
Exactly.
I think you get into trouble when you think you know everything and you think you have the best thing, and some other people may not like that product that you're creating or the environment you're creating. Like Culture Creators, there's probably some people that don't like what we do, and that's cool. It's okay. But our collective and the people we work with and work for do. So that's who we work for,
100%.
I'd rather spend 10 hours on somebody that believes in me than 10 hours trying to convince someone to believe in me. It's a waste of energy. Why am I going to try to make you believe when I got somebody that believes in us and what we're doing? I can work with them and invest 10 hours with them than trying to convert you over to me. Doesn't make any sense. But we do spend a lot of time, especially online, bro, trying to convince people. It's like, bro, especially in the new, in the political climate that we're in with the polarization of Donald Trump and all of this stuff, is like, I'm not really interested in having a deep conversation with somebody that is not going to see my worldview. I'm cool with that. I got 20 other young people that need support, and I'd rather spend my energy over here.
Facts.
You know?
100%.
And that's how I view it, at least.
That's how you build that strong, like that tribe.
Yeah.
Shout out to Loke. But man, I really want to thank you.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
For just coming here, giving all this advice, and also just sharing your story, man. Like I said, you've been such an inspirational figure for me and this group, and so many other young creators in the city. I think what you're doing is great. Thank you again for this gift. Shout out to the sponsorship.
Had to do the,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, make sure you drink that. It's, you know, there's different ways, but I definitely would like maybe get like some lime or some orange and squeeze it in there with a little bit of salt.
Okay.
I like drinking it that way. There's other ways. Obviously, tequila, you could drink it straight with a shot. A lot of people would say that it's sacrilegious to drink tequila with a certain mixer, you know, like, but drink it how you want to drink it, bro.
I want to try that. I want to try that method.
Yeah. Cool.
Where can the people find you at?
Yeah, so Reyes Poetry, at Reyes Poetry, Reyes, the word poetry, Poetry, and at We Are Culture Creators, all together, at We Are Culture Creators. And you can always find our partner org, Fiesta Vibes Detroit, online at Fiesta Vibes Detroit. So I think, yeah, thanks for having me. This is the first stop on the tour. So I'm really excited that it was with somebody that I was able to build with over the years. And yeah, man.
Honored, man.
Appreciate it.
Nah, thank you, man.
Show.
My guy. Appreciate you, bro.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do a photo with the bottle, too.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
You have a good camera? Because my camera is kind of, I mean, I can use it.
I got it. 14 Pro.